Good morning. Welcome to the Long Live Alternative Parties podcast. Free Press Media Press Inc., an alternative parties books publisher, sponsors this podcast. I'm Andrew Bouchard. Welcome to the Long Live Alternative Parties podcast. Today, friends, we have another set of exciting guests today. We are speaking with an organization that's dedicated to election reform, and that's one of our favorite topics on this podcast. We love talking about alternative parties, and we also love talking about election reform. So the organization we have today is called Rank the Vote Delaware. So welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thanks, Andrew. My name is Dale Thomas. I'm the secretary for Rank the Vote Delaware. And yeah, very happy to be here. Thank you for having us.
We're glad to have you, Dale. If we could get started by you kindly giving us an introduction to yourself, a brief biographical sketch.
Sure. So I was born in southeastern Pennsylvania. One of 9 kids, it was a full household. My 3 older brothers had moved on, but the younger 6 of us were all together, and graduated high school in 1998. Went to Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University and got my bachelor's of science in human factor psychology. Went and worked for the United States Air Force out at Edwards Air Force Base, California, for nearly 6 years. Decided that as fun as it was, it wasn't for me, and I returned back to the greater Philadelphia area, the Delaware Valley, specifically the state of Delaware, to get my Master's of Arts in Teaching English as a Second Language. Right prior to doing that, I had met my future wife, and we got married in Japan. And after I graduated with my master's degree in 2011, moved to Japan, and we were there again for nearly 6 years. It was around that time that I had started to get very involved politically from afar, particularly with the Libertarian Party. And when I returned, I got heavily involved with the Libertarian Party. I served as the Newcastle County Libertarian Party secretary for 4 years, and as state secretary for the LP Delaware for 2 years. And it was around that time that I had found out or learned about ranked choice voting, and that Rank the Vote National was looking to start a group in Delaware, and so I was one of the very first people to be on that initial call, and I'm still with the organization. That's my brief biography.
Wow, that's a lot of stuff. You said you graduated in 1998. I graduated in 1997, so it sounds like we're about the same age.
Yeah, oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, very cool. Yep, yeah, graduated high school in 98. Yep.
So you were in Japan for 6 years. Does that mean that you know some Japanese?
はい、でも私の日本語はすごい下手ですね。Yes, but my Japanese is very poor, I think.
Okay, so you did know it then, but because you've been away from it, it faded.
No, quite the opposite. I say that I say that in Japanese, and that's the literal translation. Yes, I speak Japanese, but it's poor. Mostly as a kind of an ongoing joke, an inside joke. But no, my wife and son are Japanese, and my wife makes sure that I keep up with it, which is a good thing because my profession, I'm a freelance teacher and tutor, specifically in teaching English as a second language, and I try to practice what I preach and tell students, hey, if you want to learn English, you've got to use it. And so the same here. I do my best to keep my Japanese up. Yep.
Oh, good. So it sounds like you're credible to your students because you learn the language and you're telling them to learn the language.
Oh, correct. Yeah, and that's something that I have to credit to my schooling at the University of Delaware. They said, look, if you're going to graduate from this program, you need to have credit, some sort of level in another language, so you know how the students feel. And I'm very glad that they did. Now, for me, it was a very, very practical exercise because living in Japan, you can only get so far on English, and so I would I would mainly go to two places. I would go to church on Sundays because my wife and son and I are Christians, and so we deliberately went to a Japanese speaking church, and that was very beneficial in learning the language. But also in the evenings, I would go out and just sit and talk with people. I had my dictionary and just, hey, let's talk, and usually in the evenings at restaurants and bars and things, people are a little bit more open to talking with strangers. So it worked out well.
Sounds good. Also, I heard you say that you were involved in the Libertarian Party, and we've had guests on this podcast who have operated in both spaces, the nonpartisan reform space and the partisan political party space, and they mentioned how you have different perspectives and you have different roles and different limitations and abilities in each position. Would you say that's true?
Yes, absolutely. And just I'm no longer with the Libertarian Party, though I wish them well in all that they're doing. But yes, absolutely. As a member of the Libertarian Party, and I was a delegate for the 2018 National Convention and the 2020 National Convention. The goal is to explain to voters why you would want to vote for the Libertarian candidates. From the Libertarian perspective, less government, more freedom is the idea, more self-ownership and individuality and so forth. But from a ranked choice vote perspective, we aim to be as nonpartisan as possible, and with the single goal of, hey, ranked choice voting benefits everyone, regardless of party or stance. And so I work with a plethora of people, and mainly from the Democratic Party, but we have Republicans and Greens and nonpartisan and other parties that are part of our group. So
sure. So when did Rank the Vote Delaware get started?
Sure. So I received an email from from the Libertarian Party Delaware's state chair at the time, Mr. Sean Goward. Said, hey, I got contacted by this fellow named Adam, and he wants to start something up, and I know you're interested in alternative voting, Dale, and specifically ranked choice voting. And so that was back in 2021. Okay. No, I'm sorry, 2020, excuse me, because we ended up meeting, and then later that year, I saw Adam at the 2020 National Convention. So it started up in 2020, and we were initially small and kind of had an explosion of participation. Of course, the lockdowns and things didn't help. It was hard to get together initially, but we eventually did. And we've had some struggles, but we're trying to regain momentum, and we've kept the torch burning and talking to the right people and making motions here in Delaware to get RCV passed.
Sounds good. So you said what's your role with the organization again?
Sure, I'm the secretary.
Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah, so you're the secretary? So what role
so I take all the notes.
As secretary? Notes?
Yeah, sure, sorry. So my responsibilities are I take the notes and keep the minutes and agendas, and all the other important papers, and also I sign for important documents and things of that nature. So that's my role.
Okay, so it sounds like general role for secretary in any organization would be what would be in Rank the Vote Delaware.
That's correct, yes, sir.
Okay, sounds good. So Rank the Vote Delaware, we've had people on the podcast who spoke about ranked choice voting, and our audience tends to be informed. Yet it is possible we have people who are listening who don't know what ranked choice voting is. So if you could kindly briefly summarize it, that would be great.
Sure. So, and just to preface it by saying that Rank the Vote Delaware it belongs to the larger movement of Rank the Vote National.
Okay.
But ranked choice voting is an alternative voting system where instead of just voting for one person and then the plurality wins, meaning the person with the most votes wins, what's called first past the post. Ranked choice voting says that you can rank as few or as many of the candidates on the ballot as you like, and when they go to tabulate the results, if your preferred candidate, your number one candidate, doesn't make the cut, then your vote is transferred to your second pick, and so forth and so on until someone gets a majority. And a majority, mathematically speaking, is more than 50%. And so if, everybody goes in, votes, and someone gets more than 50% on the first go around, great, perfect, then that's it. But if not, then it goes into basically what's an instant runoff voting is essentially what it is. So instead of, spending taxpayer dollars and having to come back and vote, it's done all at once. You vote, you rank the candidates, again, as few or as many as you'd like, and it's tabulated all at once until someone has a clear majority of over 50%.
Okay, that sounds good. That sounds good. So when we have people on the podcast who advocate election reform, they have various strategies. Some want to pass constitutional amendments, some want to pass laws in the area, some want to do it local, some want to do national, some want to lobby the legislators, some want to do citizen initiatives. So what strategies does Rank the Vote Delaware recommend?
Sure. So we initially were following the guidelines from Rank the Vote National, which had started, I believe, in Massachusetts, and population-wise, Massachusetts is a pretty big state, and so they have referendums. So they were trying to get people to pass it by referendum. In Delaware, we don't have referendums. The way legislation works here in Delaware is we, as an ordinary citizen or our elected officials, most often our elected officials in the Delaware General Assembly, put forth legislation. And so say that I want to get a law passed, I would go to my state senator or state representative and say, hey, I want to see this passed. And if I can get, convince them, and the elected official can then convince people, and then bring that to the floor, and then it would be voted on. So we initially had, tried to get the word out and just educate, and we were still doing that to a certain extent. And now the strategy is more talking to elected officials directly, and trying to go at a more local level. So we started kind of at the top, trying to reach, high level, elected officials, say, hey, isn't this great? And, we had some traction there, but not as much as we would have liked. And so, we've kind of turned it around, and we've been focusing on local municipalities, city councils and things of that nature to, try and get them to either adopt it locally or to pass ordinances that say that, they're in favor of this, so things of that nature. Not ordinances, resolutions that they're in favor of ranked choice voting. And, because in Delaware, we can pretty much adopt it wholesale except for, I believe it's for, the way governor and lieutenant governor are voted. There would have to be a small constitutional change there. But that's our current strategy. And the nice thing about Delaware is that it's a small state. I mean, most people know everybody else, right? And so with that said, you can easily make connections very easily, because if you know one person, then they know a whole bunch of people that, they know a whole bunch of people. And we just passed 1 million people, population wise with the 2020 census. So, and we're getting a lot of traction that way. So that's been our most recent strategy in the past year.
Okay, that sounds good. It sounds like there's a good general principle here that some states, because you mentioned, have referendum and initiatives. They might have a good strategy of using that, but you have to contextualize the strategy to your state of Delaware, which doesn't have it. So that seems like a good strategy in general, is to contextualize the strategy to the states.
Absolutely, yes, sir.
Interesting. So you mentioned that you did some education in the past. You did a lot of that, and then nowadays you're focusing more on getting to the lobbyists. What are the best ways you found to speak to the representatives? We have people who may want to get to representatives in their state, or if they're in your state. What have you found successful?
Sure. So, again, especially here in Delaware, and I would, recommend to other states that have small populations, the Wyomings and Alaska as well. Alaska already has an RCV, but, South Dakotas, Montanas, etc. Where they have smaller populations, it's who you know. And so we, basically we have a spreadsheet that says, okay, who have we reached out to, and who do we know that knows this person that we know, or do we know the person directly? And for some of them, some of the elected officials, we know them directly because they're our neighbors, or we've worked with them on other things. So we usually start with them, and then the ones that are very pro RCV, we work with them to reach out to who they know. And so that builds up a nice little coalition so that when things come about, when we're ready, it'll be like a set of dominoes where everything's lined up in place and boom. We're not quite there yet, but we have things set up. Now, of course, things change with elections. Of course, this being an election year, we're going to have to see, who's still there, who is new, et cetera, and and then double our efforts in reaching out to the people that haven't been reached out to, or trying to convince people who are on the line. I mean, you're never going to convince everybody, right?
Sure.
But again, within, like, for example, the General Assembly, we have 41 elected state representatives and 21 elected state senators. And so, without getting into too much detail, we have a good number there, but not the majority quite yet in order to make it a statewide reality. So we're kind of attacking it at both ends. We're talking to state senators and state representatives, and we've started to talk to local representatives, again, city councils and mayors and folks like that. One of our board members is involved in one of the bigger cities politically, and he again knows a bunch of people, and he's been talking to them about it and kind of putting the worm in their ear, so to speak, or the bug in their ear, so to speak. With that particular city, it's they just haven't had anybody anything other than one person running for the office or two at most. But now they're starting to see 3-4 people running for the same office, and that's right for ranked choice voting.
Okay. So when you're, I'm sorry, were you going to say something?
Yes. One last thought. We've also been reaching out to, and have been reached out to. People are coming to us as well. Folks like school board councils and smaller organizations like that. So we're really trying to run the gamut of reaching the people at the very, very top, and then the people who are running things locally, not just city councils and mayors, but school board elections or civic groups or things of that nature.
Okay. So the civic groups, are they wanting to implement it for their own purposes, or are they doing it for educational purposes?
Both. So one group that already has it implemented is the town of Arden, Delaware. Okay. A very, very quick history there. Anybody who knows the economist Henry George from Philadelphia, the whole idea is that land shouldn't be owned. It should be owned not individually. It should be owned collectively. So they're Georgists, and Arden was a Georgist colony, and still is. The people there, you cannot own land in Arden. You can only lease it from the group, following Georgist ideas. Yeah, it's also where Monopoly was play tested, because Monopoly started life as a Georgist tool to you tell people why landlords are bad and why individual ownership is bad. And not that I necessarily agree with that, but I'm just explaining the history. And it got passed around so many times that someone took the idea and totally did away with the Georgist ideas and just said, hey, wouldn't it be great to own everything? So Charles Darrow, and he ended up taking the idea and publishing Monopoly in 1936, or taking it to Parker Brothers and publishing it in 1936. So, but getting back on track, Arden uses ranked choice voting, particularly proportional ranked choice voting or single transferable vote, in order to elect their board of assessors, I believe. So it's pretty neat. And so yes, we actually have it implemented here in Delaware in one spot, but we're trying to get it everywhere, ideally.
Okay. So you mentioned single transferable vote. Can you please explain that more and how that differs from other forms of ranked choice voting?
Sure. So we basically have two forms of ranked choice voting. We have instant runoff vote and single transferable vote. So with instant runoff voting, it's basically the simplest form of ranked choice voting there is. You rank however many or few candidates you want, and every vote, if the top vote is eliminated, it passes on to the next vote. If you don't have any more votes, and then that's done, and then it does that until someone reaches more than 50%. Single transferable vote is basically the same thing, but it's used in proportional representation systems. So that's really the main difference there. Okay, sounds good. So when you are encountering people for advancing ranked choice voting, what are some objections people give to it, and how do you counter these objections? Sure. And I want to thank you for sending me your interview with Mr. Joe Kirby out in South Dakota. Because a lot of the things that he's come up against, and I'm sure other people have, we have as well. So there is the partisan concerns. Like, well, this will hurt my party, or this will make sure that we never get voted in again, or that sort of thing. So, or even worse, it's like, well, you're aligned with X, so we can't support you even if we think it's good. So things of that nature, and really just fear of the unknown. It's, well, we've always had this system. Why do we need to change? It works fine. And that's probably the hardest to overcome, because people aren't familiar with it, and then it becomes a fear of the unknown, or they think that, specifically with ranked choice voting, well, you're letting people vote multiple times over, and the point to it is that no, they vote once. We're still one person, one vote. It's just that everybody now has the privilege of ranking their votes as opposed to just choosing one. And that's the argument that we make. And we explain to people, to the two major parties, we explain, well, look, this is going to be incredibly beneficial to you in your primaries. So in Delaware, and that's how we attack with the two major parties. And I really don't like using that term because we should all be major parties, but that's that's a problem for another time. But that's what we tell them, and it's true. It's like here in Delaware, for example, especially northern Delaware, it's heavily Democratic. And one of the examples we use with Rank the Vote Delaware, when we're explaining this to people, is back in 2016, in the mayoral race, there was a very unpopular mayor, and 17 people ran for the Democratic primary for mayor, here in Wilmington. And that's great. More voices, more choices, truly more choices. Not just the illusion of choice. You really have choice there. And to look at the nuances and see. Ranked choice voting could have gone a long, long way in not just, forcing just one candidate, but looking, getting into the nuances of why one person would be better than another. And it's the same for the Republicans. They're much more popular down south in Sussex County, southern Kent County, and most of Sussex County. And so that's the what we share with them and how it's beneficial. And then with minority parties, we say, well, this gives you a real chance because before people would just vote strategically and say, well, I would love to vote for you, but I can't because if X defeats Y, then that's going to be the end of the world. I need to vote for Y, even though I don't like Y's policies as much as I do yours. So it gets rid of the spoiler effect that we have in first past the poll voting. And so that's one of the big things that we talk about. And you can see this in elections that have had ranked choice voting. And really, ultimately, what we tell people, everybody, regardless of their party, is wouldn't it be great if you could actually approach people who don't necessarily agree with you? And that's really the true benefit of ranked choice voting is we are so divided politically as a nation, from the local levels all the way up to the federal level, that no one's willing to talk to anybody anymore. Oh, you're with X, forget it. And that's what ranked choice voting really excels, or where it excels, because say I go and I say, okay, I'm for candidate Y, or I am candidate Y, and I see that you're voting for candidate X. Before I would just skip the house and move on. But now I can say, under ranked choice voting, I can say, hey, I see that you're voting for candidate X. That's great. Here's what candidate X and I have in common. And would you please consider me for your second vote? So it really gives more voice to all candidates, regardless of party. And imagine that, people talking with each other, people
Sure.
being civil and nice, and not having the mudslingings. I mean, it's really, the mudslinging has just gotten so bad where, people are proud. Well, I, support, A, B, and C, and, if you don't like it, you can shove it, and like, gee guys, we can do better than that. Come on. So that's really the benefit of RCV, or one of the main benefits, but there's many benefits to RCV.
Okay, sounds good. So you mentioned how Rank the Vote Delaware started. How did Rank the Vote, the organization, the large organization, start?
That's a good question. I believe, don't quote me on this, but I believe it started out as a desire to get RCV passed in Massachusetts, and
Okay.
it just went from there. But don't quote me on that. I'd have to go back and look. I apologize. I don't know that off the top of my head.
Okay, fair enough. So how can our audience support you and your organization?
Oh, thank you. There's a few things you can do. If you are in Delaware, or you just happen to like Delaware, you can reach out to us on our website at rankthevote.de, as in Delaware, .org. So rankthevote.de.org. And that's really a good place to start to reach out to us. If you want to donate to us, that would be wonderful. so we can, print more materials and reach out to more people, and things of that nature. But if you're not in Delaware, I believe that every state, other than those that, already have ranked choice voting, and then they may still have organizations. So states like Alaska and Maine where they've got it, statewide. But in your state, there's most likely, Rank the Vote, name your state. So Rank the Vote Iowa, Rank the Vote Maryland, Rank the Vote Nevada, etc. And, you'll reach out to those people. You can, go to, I believe it's rankthevote.org. So that's the national site. I'm going to double check that real quick just to make sure. And hopefully my computer will work with me here. But, I'm sorry. The website is rankthevote.us. Rankthevote.us. Yeah. If you put in .org, it'll still take you there, but, rankthevote.us. And, through the website there, you can find your state's organization and get plugged in with them to see what they're doing to get it going. One other thing I would suggest as well is that there are other alternatives to ranked choice voting, such as approval voting, star voting, and you go with the momentum that is in your state. That's one of the things that we've tried to champion when talking to people who say, well, we think that approval voting is better than ranked choice voting. And okay, fine, but right now ranked choice voting, at least in Delaware, has the momentum, and so we're sticking with that. But we would be just as happy with approval voting or star voting. Again, there's pros and cons to all of them.
Sure.
But do your research and see who really has the momentum in your area or your state. But as far as ranked choice voting is concerned, pretty much every state has a local or state organization.
Okay, that's good advice. Go where the momentum is.
Yeah, exactly. So, because I want to emphasize and I want to implore anybody who's listening to this, let's not fight each other on which system is the best. Pretty much any of the alternative voting systems are better than what we have now. We can see where a two-party system has completely failed us. And it divides us into, team blue and team red, and that's great for sporting events. I love it when, the Phillies play, the Mets or the Braves or, whomever. But it's not good for politics. We really need to be, able to talk to each other, and reach across the aisle. Now, we're not going to agree on everything, that's fine, but, just to get back to civility. And so that's what I would recommend.
Excellent. Dale, we thank you for coming on the podcast today and talk about your interesting life as well as the great things that Rank the Vote Delaware is doing.
I really appreciate it, Andrew, for having me on here. And I look forward to hearing the podcast once it's published and sharing it with your permission.
Of course. Yep, of course.
Awesome.
All right. Take care and all the best.
You as well. Thanks again so much.
Bye now.